How do NBA rivalries start? Well, to begin with, you have to have two talented teams that play meaningful games against each other. You also have to have superstars on each team. And in particular, I think you have to have superstars where the opposing team dislikes or sports hates the opposing superstar. And then lastly, I do think you have to have a little bit of animosity between the players. Um, where they kind of don't like each other to a certain extent. I think the NBA is a little too nice. Everyone's friends. You always see the jersey swap, and that's fine. I'm not asking for the fights of the 80s. But I do think the NBA is missing this emotional component of real rivalries. And after watching the NBA Cup a couple of days ago between the Spurs and the Thunder, I couldn't help but think, are we potentially watching the NBA's next great rivalry? Hello, my name is Nathan, and this is Thunder Up Talk. Like my videos, subscribe, all of that if you would. I'd really appreciate it. So, I just want to talk about what the NBA is missing in regard to rivalries. I think there's elite talent all across the NBA. It might be the most talented the NBA's ever been. But I feel like there are fewer emotional rivalries than in the past. And I just love this idea of the Thunder and the Spurs having this incredible rivalry for the next 5 to 10 years. But yeah, 5 to 10 years. Um, because rivalries they go beyond the box score. That's what makes it fun. These narratives, and they just have a lot of meaning and emotion, and I love that. So they typically begin with moments, and I do think that the high pressure moments, and I think the NBA Cup could be kind of the tipping point, just the start of this rivalry between the Spurs and the Thunder. There was definitely this emotional component of Victor Wembanyama coming back from injury, and he looked incredible. He was awesome. He was dominant. He completely changed the energy for the Spurs when he came in the second quarter. And then even after the game, he had words. He had mentioned things about how the Spurs play ethical basketball, and that was definitely a shot to Shai and the Thunder. If you don't think it does, you're wrong because it was, and I'm all for it. I think that is great. I love kind of the going back and forth, and I hope we see a little bit more of that as this potential rivalry continues. So, um, Vegas did feel different. You know, it wasn't just a normal regular season game. There was money behind it, and like I said, Victor was coming back from injury. Isaiah Hartenstein was as well, and both teams played super hard. About the NBA Cup, so semifinals. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, though. As a fan of the Thunder, I'm not worried at all about that game. We lost 111 to 109 just by 2 points. Shai, in my opinion, played maybe one of his worst games of the season. He was 1 of 7 from three. He had 5 turnovers, which the guy averages under 2 turnovers. So he was not on his A game. I would give that was a subpar game for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for his super high expectations as an MVP. Um, we didn't shoot good at all from three. I think we shot 24% as a team. The Spurs didn't shoot that well from three either, but at least they were in the 30s at 31%. So this game was fun. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think it definitely showed the potential. It had components to a future rivalry. Um, and right now, I think the Thunder, they have to worry about Denver. I think they're kind of in their own little tier under the Thunder. But after that, you kind of have the Rockets, Spurs, and Lakers. And give this young Spurs team another year to develop, maybe some experience in the playoffs. And I think next year will be that year where we might see a Spurs Thunder Western Conference Finals. And I look forward to that for so many reasons. Um, Another thing that just makes this potential rivalry so fun is kind of the difference between Victor Wembanyama and Shai. Shai is he's just got this quiet dominance about him. He's not super emotional. Victor, on the other hand, he'll talk to the media a little bit. We've seen that. He'll flex on Kaysen Wallace when Kaysen fouls him, like totally random. Like, okay, you're going to the free throw line. But again, to me as a fan, that just shows how much just his competitiveness, how much that game meant to him. And I think he wants the Thunder. I think he wants all the smoke. I think he wants the Thunder. I think he thinks that the Spurs can beat the Thunder, and that's the way your superstar should think. But they're not quite there yet, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, I think every rivalry needs that contrast between those two superstars. Now, there are definitely similarities. So that Spurs team that I watched last night, they played hard, 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 hard. They played incredible defense. They didn't give up. I saw some things that I don't typically see from opposing teams. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for example, he got blocked by Vassell. You never see Shai getting blocked on those little mid-range shots. Chet thought he should go up against Victor one-on-one on a kind of a it was kind of a close shot, but he did like his little fadeaway that he typically does, and he can usually get that off 99% of the time. But Victor blocked that one too. So there are definitely things that the Thunder probably have learned from that game. The biggest being, you can throw a punch against the Spurs, but they're going to punch back, and how are you going to respond? Um, but another just cool similarity with the Spurs is just how deep they are. So this is one thing I didn't really realize. I've talked about the Thunder quite a bit and how deep they are. They've got 7 guys who are averaging 10 plus points per game. Well, the Spurs actually have 8 guys who are averaging over 10 points per game. Victor Wembanyama, De'Aaron Fox, Stephen Castle, Vassell, Harrison Barnes, Harper, Keldon Johnson, and Champagnie. And, that is a lot of guys averaging double figures. They're really good, really deep, and they play hard. Um, Now, as far as their ratings as a team throughout the season, the Thunder are still quite a bit better. They're number one in defensive rating, fifth in offensive rating, and number one in net rating. The Spurs, meanwhile, are 14th on the defensive end, middle of the pack. They're eighth for offensive rating and eighth in net rating as well. So I think the Thunder are still better, still have better talent, but man, I think this has great potential for the future. Why is this good for the NBA? So I think I'm kind of over the LeBron James, Steph Curry, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard era. Those guys are getting old. Kevin Durant's doing his thing in Houston, but he's only got probably a couple years left too. It's time for the NBA to kind of catch up with the storytelling, with these new guys, with Victor Wembanyama and Chet and J-Dub and Shai, and some of these younger teams that are starting to compete in the NBA, like the Detroit Pistons. It's time for the NBA to start really digging deep into these narratives, um, just have better storytelling with these young guys. And because LeBron's not going to be in the NBA for another 10 years. I think he's only got a year or maybe 2, but I think he should hang it up after this year, honestly. He just doesn't look the same. But it's just time for the NBA to really lean into these potential rivalries like the Thunder and the Spurs. Now, they can't be forced or manufactured. It has to start with competition, like I said, in meaningful games. The Cup isn't a playoff game, but it was more meaningful than a normal regular season game. How this really turns into a rivalry is when we start seeing the Thunder and the Spurs in the playoffs. Um, and going deeper into the series, like 6 or 7 game series. That's how this will turn into a rivalry, and I think this team, the Spurs and the Thunder, I think have potential for that. Um, this is just the start of a great rivalry, and it's definitely not the peak. But yeah, I just look forward to these next couple of games. We get to see a bigger sample size of Spurs Thunder when they play on December 23rd and December 25th. So I look forward to that, and I hope you guys do too. With that, I will talk to you later. My name is Nathan, and this is Thunder Up Talk, and I will talk to you later. Bye.